11 score and 17 years ago, several of our forefathers boarded those 3 ships that were docked there in Boston Harbor. And then they proceeded systematically to do what? To turn Boston Harbor into one gigantic cup of tea. And what were they doing? They were protesting taxes. But specifically, what were they doing? They were protesting a tax rate on their imports of tea of a mere 10%. Now, if you think about that, a 10% tax on the import of tea, in retrospect, today, it looks almost what? Almost quaint. And you think about it, in 1913, when the 16th Amendment was passed, what was the top marginal income tax rate at that time? A mere 3%. And of course, it went up rapidly in World War I, and then we had brought that to where we are today, which is obviously much higher today. But again, in retrospect, the original tax burden looked almost quaint. And consider the very unique tax that we have here in Texas, our property tax system. Because we don't actually, in Texas, we don't get to own real estate outright, right? What do? We rent from the government. Because as long as you're paying your income taxes or your property taxes, of course you can use your property, of course you can convey it. But the moment you fall behind on your property taxes, your real estate is actually at risk. So I believe we don't actually own real estate in Texas. We rent from the government. Now, what would our founding fathers say about the regime that we live under today in our state and in our country? What would Sam Adams and the Sons of Liberty say about where we have wound up, about where we've arrived? Well, I fear they would say that we no longer really live in a free society. We are taxed when we receive our paychecks to fund Social Security. We are taxed on our income. We are taxed on our property. And if somehow under all the burden of these taxes you manage to accumulate and manage to have a taxable estate, then when you die, you're taxed yet again because the inheritance tax is coming back. However, look around, and by your presence here today, you can see that the torch of liberty has not been entirely extinguished. Not in Texas, and at least not in Montgomery County. And I don't know about you guys, but I've been waiting as long as I can remember. Indeed, I would say I've been waiting my entire life for a nationwide tax protest, and it has finally begun. It has begun here today and over the last month or so. But friends, this must be only the very beginning. Because although what we're doing is important here today, and don't let the media fool you. They will tell you, they will either try to ignore you, or they will belittle you, or they will tell you that what you're doing is not important. But it is. The original Boston Tea Party mattered a lot. It mattered to our independence. Those protests back in 1990 and 1991 in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, they mattered a lot. So what you're doing here today, it matters, and it matters a lot. And we have to do it again. So what are we going to do tomorrow? What are we going to do over the next few months? A couple of things. Number one, we have to educate ourselves on the principles of liberty. And I would suggest we have to turn to our founding fathers and the wisdom that they had, and we have to read what they said. And that way we'll be educated on the principles of liberty. And as we're doing that, we have to do, what did they say in the preamble of the Constitution? We have to bestow, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. So we have to educate our children also on the principles of liberty. That's number one. Number two, we have to advocate aggressively, individually and collectively, a zero tolerance, no growth in government policy. And this is what we have to demand from our lawmakers. Now, we understand government has an appropriate function, but I think we all believe here today, if we look around, we recognize government at every level, state, local, national, whatever, every level, it's large enough. It doesn't need to grow anymore. There is no program out there that is so vital to our very existence that it needs to grow anymore. So give them a little bit for population inflation, but no net growth for government. Now, we may not be able to get that commitment from every candidate while our movement is still a little bit small, but we will grow this movement, and that is the ultimate public policy goal that we have to extract from those that make our policy. So we have to advocate this policy. And finally, we have to continue to protest. We need to be back here again, April 15th next year, and this crowd needs to be double the size of it that it is today. And then the next year we need to be back again, and it needs to be double what it is next year. And we need to stop and not give up until we have reawakened a sense of liberty among our people, until we have truly secured the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Thank you. May God bless you. May God bless Texas and Montgomery County.
There's another one of those right-wing, radical, conservative extremists right there, guys. God bless America! That's right. So if you're just joining us, you're kind of late to the party, but we're glad you're here. Everybody that came just in the last hour, the traffic is unbelievable, I'm told. Anybody have to fight that traffic? And they told us this would never really catch on. That's what they're saying in Washington. What do you think? Is this going to catch on? You think your voice is going to be heard? No! What do you think that helicopter flying around earlier was? They were shooting us, man. They were saying, whoo! What are those people doing? They taking back America? I think so. If you guys want to do another, for those of y'all who have not been through the parade with your sign, we're going to do another one of those if you're down here when we start after the next speaker. We got another guy coming up, and if you want to run through